There are many hidden whispers of the Trinity in the Old Testament, as well as the pre-existent, incarnate, divine Messiah we find later in Jesus. One of these is found in Genesis 12. To understand the context here, we have to back up past the Tower of Babel episode in Genesis 11. The remainder of Genesis 11 is devoted to genealogy, and that's the genealogy of Abram back to Noah's son Shem. Genealogies often contain something important or interesting, and that pattern continues here. Compare the last two verses of Abraham's genealogical roots in Genesis 11, 31 through 32, with Acts 7, 2 through 4, and you'll discover that Yahweh first contacted Abraham before he got to Haran, and it was more than a conversation in his head. In Acts 7, 2 through 4, Stephen says, "The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was in Mesopotamia before he settled in Haran, and said to him, 'Go out from your land and from your relatives and come to the land that I will show you.' Then he went out from the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran, and from there, after his father died, he caused him to move to this land in which you now live." Pay close attention to the first line. Yahweh appeared to Abraham. Abraham's first divine encounter in Mesopotamia involved a visible appearance of Yahweh. Genesis 12 is a follow-up. Abraham and Yahweh had talked before, face to face. That's also what happened in Genesis 12. In our modern culture, we mostly pay attention to the first three verses. "And Yahweh said to Abram, 'Go out from your land, from your relatives, and the house of your father to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and ye will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you I will curse, and all families of the earth will be blessed in you.'" But if we pay close attention once we read on in verses 6 through 7, we find a special treasure. "And Abram traveled through the land up to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanites were in the land at that time, and Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, 'To your offspring I will give this land.' And he built an altar there to Yahweh who had appeared to him." There are two instances in these two verses where we read that Yahweh appeared to Abraham, and the idea of the visible appearance of Yahweh as a man is not a new one. A close reading of Genesis chapters 12 through 50 tells us that the visible manifestation is the normal choice of Yahweh with respect to Abraham and his descendants. If we follow the narrative up to Genesis 15, 1 through 6, where the covenant of Genesis 12, 1 through 3 is repeated and ratified by a covenantal ceremony, the description of the person speaking to Abraham here is even more explicit. "After these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield, and your reward shall be very great.' Then Abram said, 'O Yahweh my Lord, what will you give me? I continue to be childless, and my heir is Eliezer of Damascus.' And Abram said, 'Look, you have not given me a descendant, and here a member of my household is my heir.' And behold, the word of Yahweh came to him saying, 'This person will not be your heir, but your own son will be your heir.' And he brought him outside and said, 'Look toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them.' And he said to him, 'So shall your offspring be.' And he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness." Notice right from the start that it is the word of Yahweh who comes to Abraham in a vision. As before, the encounter was a visible manifestation of Yahweh. The word here is something that can be seen. Why else would he call it a vision? In verse 4, we read that the word brought him outside to continue the conversation. This isn't the kind of language one would expect if Abraham was only just hearing a sound. These appearances of the word of Yahweh are the conceptual backdrop to the Apostle John's language in his gospel that Jesus was the Word. Right away in John 1:1, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And in John 1:14, And the Word became flesh and took up residence among us, and we saw his glory, glory as the one and only from the Father, full of grace and truth. And John goes on to say some even more dramatic things in connection with this idea, but they're less familiar. In John 8:56, Jesus, the incarnate Word, informs his Jewish antagonists that he appeared to Abraham prior to his incarnation. Abraham your father rejoiced that he would see my day, and he saw it and was glad. The Jews object to this claim, which leads to Jesus uttering his famous statement, "Before Abraham was, I am." When Jesus says I am instead of the expected I was, he is taking for himself the name of God revealed to Moses in Exodus 3 at the burning bush. There, God said his name was I am. The burning bush incident also involved a visible appearance. The Jewish audience of Jesus was not averse to the idea that Abraham saw the Messiah. Andreas J. Kostenberger quotes George R. Beasley Murray about this and says, "To say that Abraham saw the Messiah was neither new nor offensive to Jewish teachers. It was its application to Jesus that was unbelievable." And again, Genesis 12 and 15 provide the coherent backdrop to all of this. So this interchange is very significant, since the Word is clearly equated with and identified as Yahweh in Genesis 12 and 15, when the New Testament has Jesus saying, "That was me." He is claiming to be the Word of the Old Testament, who was the visible Yahweh.